to say your name.
Okay. I am Shelly Malikowski.
My name is Steve Malikowski, and our family has been members of All Saints since the second week the church started. We have and continue to love this church. It's been just a tremendous place for us. We count some of our dearest friends in life as members that we've met either through here or attend here, which has been a real blessing. We were rocking along and as a family and as a church, and then we had some really tragic news in our family where our daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. And I will have to say that as I tell people about our church, I have never been involved with a church before that demonstrated Christ's love like our church did at that time for us. I mean, our physical, emotional, and spiritual needs were all catered to brilliantly. We had people that were involved in all facets of our life during this about a 1.5 year period from the time our daughter was diagnosed to the time she passed away. We were just surrounded in love and friendship, and it was a beautiful, beautiful scene on how this church rallied around people that were in desperate need.
We were fed and clothed. Our children were brought to and from us, both here and in San Antonio, where we were for some time, treating our daughter. And I mean, our home was decorated for Christmas, and presents were under the tree, and that was the church combined with our girls' school. And it really was the picture of Christ serving. And it's hard to forget now what that looks like. And that, the church became God for us and provided every single need that we could imagine. So it's a beautiful picture.
Yeah, we certainly felt the hands and feet of Christ in our lives at that time. That was for sure. Yeah.
All right, my name is Lewis Hughes. This is my son, Will, and we've been attending All Saints since the first Sunday. We originally just visited All Saints to show support for the families that were going to start the church, with really no intention of joining the church, actually. We live in Taylor, Texas, which is on the polar opposite side of where All Saints is, and at the time I kind of deemed the church as geographically undesirable because it was just such a far drive, but we came that first Sunday and we just kept coming. So much of this story occurred when Will was much younger. Will's going to be 18 tomorrow, and a lot of this story happened when he was 5 and 6 years old. One of the great things about All Saints is the people that attend the church here. One of the families that's been very instrumental in the church in many different ways is Steve and Shelly Malikowski. They have 3 daughters, and when Will was about 5, one of their daughters was diagnosed with leukemia, and the church did everything it could to surround them and love and care for them. And one of the ways that Will and I responded was we'd say prayers. And so at night, oftentimes I'd put Will to bed, and we would say prayers for his mom, his sisters, and then oftentimes we'd say a prayer for Alden and her family and the doctors that were taking care of her. It was in December, I believe, and we were at church, and I think one of the elders got up at the church and announced that the leukemia was just too much for Alden's body, and she had passed away. And I knew what that meant, but Will was probably only 6 years old at that time, and he didn't really understand what that meant. And I didn't understand that he didn't know what that meant. So that night, that Sunday night, we said our prayers, and I mentioned to Will that Alden had left this earth, and her body was made whole, and that she had died. And when I mentioned that to Will, it just created a lot of angst with Will. He got very upset, and because that was the first time he had realized really what had happened. And so I calmed Will down, and he got to bed, and then I didn't know what to do. And our pastor at the time, I mean, one thing about All Saints, if you come here long enough, you're going to get some C.S. Lewis quotes in the service. But we've also had some other good folks that have been quoted. And one of them's Martin Luther. And Martin Luther, there's a quote that's attributed to him that basically, what would he do if he knew the world was going to come to end? And his reply was, well, I'll go out and plant a tree. And so I thought, man, what a beautiful gesture. Because to plant a tree, you have to have faith and you have to have hope. And no one would go out and plant a tree, especially in this soil, if you didn't have hope and faith that it would mature into a beautiful tree. So we actually live on some property, and so the next day I thought, Will and I really need to do something physical. And so we went down the lane of the road at our house, and we picked up some acorns. And that's actually what the acorns look like. It's a bur oak tree. It's a beautiful tree. It's native to Texas. It's one of the most majestic trees in central Texas. And so we went out and we gathered up the acorns and we planted them in a little pot. And this was in December. And then we just watered them and then we just waited. And then in the springtime, from those 3 little pots, we had these little green shoots come up. And so we just, we watered them, we cared for them. And I think this went on for like 5 or 6 years. And so eventually we got these trees up to nice sized containers. And as fate would have it, Stephen Malikowski was actually involved in the acquisition of this property. And so when it looked like we were actually going to be able to build a church, I called David Breeding on the phone and said, David, I've got these 3 trees. And they really need to have one of them needs to have a home on this campus. And so David came out, picked up one of the trees, and we planted it. And it's a beautiful tree. It's young, but before it's all over, it's going to be one of the most magnificent trees on this entire campus. And so that's the story of Alden's tree.
I remember that day we were sitting in the sanctuary, the gym sanctuary at St. Gabriel's, and David Breeding came up and tapped you on the shoulder and said, can you guys go over to the new site after church? And we happened to have our 2 girls with us, which was weird because they were like out of college and in college, and it was hot. It was in August, wasn't it?
I just assumed that it had something to do with the building, since I was so involved with the site selection and the building campaign. I just assumed that there was just something that needed to be addressed, and he wanted my input or opinion about it. So we drove over here, and the Hughes were here, and it was.
Yeah, we walked over to this location in front of the new chapel, and they started telling the story of the story of the trees and Martin Luther. And they were crying, and then we started crying.
We were crying.
We couldn't even believe that this was, something that they had kept. I think it was 7 years, maybe. And I've thought about it a lot. The faithfulness of God. When Joshua directed the 12, one man from each of the 12 tribes to take a stone out of the middle of the Jordan as they crossed over to the Promised Land, and each man was to take and create a monument in Gilgal. And so that they would remember. And I often think of Alden's tree as just a way for us to remember his faithfulness. And it's, we all prayed for our daughter to live. And God answered our prayer, but just in a different way. And it's just a good reminder that he is faithful. It might not look the way we want it to, but he is faithful. And so I think that tree is a beautiful thing that we get to come onto the campus and see her tree, and I'm happy that we get to put a marker there. I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, it's an amazingly beautiful tree, and how it's grown over the last few years is quite remarkable. And when they planted the tree, I actually made the comment. I said it was about the same size Alden was. So it's a little bitty tree, now it's growing to be a huge tree. So it's wonderful. Yeah. We love the Hugheses, and they. Just wonderful. Of all of the things, I will have to say this about the Hughes family. I'll never forget the apple pies. That was one of the gifts that we would get occasionally, and we loved receiving those apple pies. At least I did specifically.